Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 642. Today, Vasco Duarte returns to the podcast to discuss the Scrum Master. Scrum Masters are the face of agile in many organizations. Helping team facilitators get the role right benefits not only the agile community, but every business they are involved in. As a matter of fact, Vasco suggests that a Scrum Master is your next CEO. Vasco has been working in the software industry since 1998 and has learned the hard way what works and what doesn't. His goal is to help our industry evolve. We can't become better without trying out new, innovative approaches to software development. The majority of our businesses run on software. We owe it to society to get better at an activity that affects so much of our lives and our country's economies. Vasco consults companies that understand software is a key component of their business model. Links to get in touch with Vasco in the show notes. Links to the podcast, The Scrum Masters Toolbox, also in the show notes. Highly recommended. Are you ready to meet your next CEO? It's time for the interview. Vasco Duarte, author, podcaster, CEO, and more. Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Hey, Thomas. It's been a pleasure listening to your podcast all these years. I have to say this was one of my faithful listens back in the day when I was learning. So I'm so happy to be again here on the podcast with you.
I am thrilled to have you back. And hey, I know that you've even interviewed people I've worked with. So on your podcast. So it is always exciting. What was it? A few years ago, I was working at Highland Software, and a friend of mine, Jeremy Willits, and said, "Oh, I just did the Scrum Master Toolbox, and I was interviewed by Vasco Duarte. Do you know him?"
The Agile podcasters community is not that large, so definitely, if you're doing podcasts in the Agile space, get in touch, be part of the community. And
absolutely,
Tom's been there. You were a pioneer.
I've been at this. This'll run pretty soon after we actually record this. But I've been doing this for somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 years now. So there are a few. There are a few shows.
Thank you for your service.
Well, it's also thank all the people who've been part of this to educate me, because I learn a ton. Today, there are a couple of things I've wanted to talk to you about, but let's start with, you're doing some neat new things in the Scrum Master world. Why don't you tell the listeners?
Yeah, so absolutely. So first of all, Scrum Master is the focus of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. Of course, that's why it's called Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. Kind of the clue is in the name. And also what I've noticed is that for some reason, Scrum Masters seem to be ashamed of the role. And, there's a lot of people adding Agile Coach to their title on LinkedIn. But of course, we can't forget that, day to day, there's a lot of anonymous Scrum Masters. And I do want to emphasize anonymous Scrum Masters, making sure that the teams they work with succeed. And it's like a double anonymity, if you will, because they're anonymous to the wider Agile community. There's no big spotlight on the Scrum Master role, unfortunately, right now. But also very often anonymous to their organizations, because they're doing the work for the teams to succeed. And I think that role of service, that role of dedication requires some focus, of course, to bring new ideas and concepts and knowledge to the Scrum Masters, but also to highlight that this is a key role in the transformation of the world of work. I mean, think about it. Wouldn't it be great if there would be so many more people out there serving teams, helping them succeed, and then letting them take the credit?
That sounds good. Why don't you think that people with that title actually feel good about having that title, or are embracing it, versus, well, I have to add something else to my name to feel good?
Yeah, that's a great point, or great question, Tom. I can't say for sure, but of course, having been through many agile transformations like yourself, we see that very often what happens is that agile coaches are hired. They come in, they are in direct contact with leadership, they get all the spotlight, they do the big changes, and then they leave. And then who's left to pick up the pieces? Of course, we, the Scrum Masters, are left to pick up the pieces. We need to work with the teams long after the Agile coaches have gone and moved on to the next transformation. Now, let me be very clear. Agile coach and Scrum Master, they are both needed roles. There's work that Agile coaches do that is incredibly critical for the adoption of Agile in our industry. What I'm trying to say is that Agile coach is a career path, if you will, but so is Scrum Master. I mean, think about this from the sports perspective. When you need to transform a team from, average to low performance to high performance, there's two things that you do. Either you spend a lot of money buying the best players, and we see this kind of argument and discussion going on every year for every major sport out there, right? Like, who's the next big name moving from one team to the other? Or very often also, you hire a coach. You hire someone who's there with the team, working every day, nurturing the team, helping them find a great collaboration, environment and platform for them to succeed. And we hear in all sports, we hear of many teams that are filled with players that are not big names, but they succeed. And then, of course, some of those names become big because the team succeed, and then everybody points to, oh, it was this player, it was that player. But the coaches have a great role to play in bringing that teams to that high level of performance. And I think that's also what Scrum Masters do every day. Like somebody said on the podcast, I am the platform on which the team can build up to succeed, right? Like as a Scrum Master, we are that platform that allows teams to succeed. And I think it's very important to bring back the focus to that. And that's why here at the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, we're organizing the Scrum Master Summit in May 2021 to bring attention to that role and to bring a lot of knowledge, experience, and networking to all of those Scrum Masters out there who might be feeling a little bit unsure about whether the Scrum Master role is that important, but clearly it is. And we want to make sure that these Scrum Masters have access to information and to the network of peers that will help them feel that, okay, I have my tribe here. Like this is a real tribe. We can build something real here.
Before we dive into the Scrum Master Summit, I'd like to peel back just a little bit on why we think this is a difficult position, or at least why we think it's unappreciated. One of the things that I've always taken away from conversations with you is the fact that the business is pretty darn critical to this whole Agile thing, right? It isn't about the process, it's about more business. Why doesn't the business recognize the enablement that they get from Scrum Masters? Because if the business recognized that, so would the Scrum Master.
That's a great point. I think that part of it is also on us, Scrum Masters, right? Because we go on and we harp on about, we need more engagement from the team and we need to follow this process and everybody should come to the daily meeting. All of those are great things and they are part of Scrum as the framework is defined. But we need to work with the teams to reach particular business objectives. Like, for example, one of the aspects the Scrum Masters are definitely critical actors is the interaction with the product owner and between product owner and team. Because obviously the product owner is the entity in the team that brings that business focus constantly, right? Just like the developers and testers bring the quality and the technical focus, the product owner brings the business, the growth, the development of the business focus. And we need to interact with this role very deliberately, right? We need to work with the product owner to make that vision clear, to make that business direction visible and transparent to the team. And sometimes Scrum Masters, I've done that too. We focus too much on the process, right? We focus on when things happen and what must happen. And we forget that it's not just about that. It's also about setting the business direction. I'll give you a concrete example. How many Scrum Masters out there that don't make a point of defining clear sprint goals for the team.
I think that's one of the most ignored part of Scrum that I see.
Absolutely. And it's a great tool we have as Scrum Masters to bring the business focus to the team. And by not using that tool, we are creating the environment whereby the Scrum Master becomes a bureaucrat of Scrum. And that's a danger for us. And let me clarify what that danger is. There are many organizations out there firing their Scrum Masters and hiring project managers. And I'm sure you've seen some of those organizations doing that, and I've seen some of those. And why is that? It's because the Scrum Masters in that organization, either through ignorance or lack of support or just not wanting to do that work, they haven't been able to focus on the business impact, right? And because of that, we are diminishing the role. And I happen to believe that the Scrum Master is the role of the future in terms of changing how work gets done, right? Helping facilitate communication, helping facilitate collaboration. That is so important in knowledge work, and we need to do that. But because of that, we also need to recognize that we are there to help the business achieve business objectives. We need to bring that business perspective with simple tools like the sprint goal and others, but really bring that business focus, because that will grow the importance of the role, but also the impact of the role in the organization.
Do you think the past year of distributed teams, distributed organizations has made this disconnect between the value of the Scrum Master and the perceived value that organizations are getting more deep or easier to recognize? Has it exacerbated it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll tell you my own perspective that comes from the experience of working with my clients, is that the Scrum Master role is constantly being questioned. Mm-hmm. And in remote meetings, of course, or in remote setting, of course, we have a lot more meetings, right? And because of that, it's very tempting for Scrum Masters out there to kind of see themselves and identify themselves with the role of a person who just sets up the meetings, gets the meeting started, and then disappears into the background. Now, that might be the right thing to do in some cases, but it certainly isn't the right thing to do in all cases. And in some of the clients, that's the feedback I get. I get asked by CEOs, what are the Scrum Masters doing in my organization? When I'm in a meeting, the only thing they say is they start the meeting and they disappear. What value do they bring? Right? And this is a fair question. Mm-hmm. By the way, CEOs are asking this from project management roles, from PMO roles, from all kinds of roles. It's not just the Scrum Master role, but I help Scrum Masters. I want to help Scrum Masters, so I worry about that because I see the value that the Scrum Master can bring. And in remote setting, it's even worse because we're not there finding the problems in communication. We're not there every day looking at the team that might not be talking to each other, right? Many of us are interacting with our team members through chat systems like Slack or Discord or Microsoft Teams or whatever, right? We are not seeing the whole picture. So it's even harder today to do a good Scrum Master job.
How do we fix it? As leaders, you and I, others in the industry, how do we make this better?
Well, I think it first starts, just like for any product, by setting a vision. And that's what we did at the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. I wrote a blog post recently that says Scrum Masters are the future CEOs. And that's actually based on a podcast by the Lean Institute, Lean Enterprise Institute, with Alan Mulally, who's the ex-CEO of Boeing and Ford. And he's talking in that podcast episode, I'll send you the link and then we can link to it in the show notes. In that podcast episode, Alan Mulally, famous CEO, turned around Ford, which was not an easy feat, is sharing how he did his work. And one of the things he shares is that, he set up a meeting every week where they reviewed what was going on for every major business unit. And he noticed that the teams, in this case, his direct reports, they were not sharing any problems. It was all green. And of course, he was the CEO, and he knew we're losing $17 billion a year. How can everything be green and we still lose money? So through conversations, he managed to encourage one of his direct reports to actually come up and share a problem. And they did. And right there in that weekly check-in, they fixed a set of next steps to try to solve that problem. So the whole team got engaged. They came up with ideas. They loaned each other expertise and people from their departments, and they figured out the problem. And here's what Alan did. Alan Mulally, a CEO, what he did when somebody shared, hey, I got a problem in my team, he started clapping. He started celebrating the fact that we can now talk about problems. This is what Scrum Masters do every day. They get teams together. They encourage them to share the problems that they have. They celebrate when the problems are shared and when solutions are found. And they help the teams collaborate. So for me, my vision for the Scrum Master role is that this is kind of a career path development that may lead to being a CEO of an organization later on. Because what we are learning through practice every day on the job is how to help others succeed. And this is what CEOs also need to do. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Scrum Master and CEO are the same role. They're not the same role. The CEO also has product owner responsibilities, although not in all cases, but in many cases, they do have that kind of responsibilities. So it's kind of a mix. So I'm not blind to that aspect. I'm just saying that facilitating work between team members to get your team to a high level of performance, this is what we do as Scrum Masters every day. And this is what Alan Mulally did as he tells the story in that podcast we'll link to in the show notes. So I think this is a great example, and it's a great vision for us as Scrum Masters to develop ourselves to one day be ready, if not to be a CEO, at least to be a Scrum Master in a leadership team. I mean, Tom, have you seen leadership team meetings lately? Are they well organized? They keep their time boxes. They have a clear agenda. They are collaborative, no infighting, right? No competing for the spot. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Leadership teams are the ones that need Scrum Masters the most, and Scrum Master is the role that is there to help them become high-performing teams as well.
So having a vision, I can see that. Dead on, have a vision. What else can we do to add energy into this equation? Because the only way we change behavior, right, is to add energy. What is it that you're doing that will help add energy? We have the Scrum Masters Toolbox podcast. That's one thing. You're also doing...
Yeah, so first of all, we're doing this event, which the first time we organized it is this year, 2021. Hopefully we'll organize it many more years to come. And we're doing an event to bring the community together. And we want to do this in a very specific way. Of course, there will be talks, there will be inspiring and visionary keynotes. Alan Shalloway is going to talk about what he calls the new Scrum game. What's next for Scrum? Jeff Watts is going to talk about the future of the Scrum Master role. Lisette Sutherland is going to talk to us about remote facilitation, which is a key skill set for Scrum Masters. So there's inspiration, right? Sharing knowledge. There's going to be a lot of talks about sharing experience, direct experience by Scrum Masters. But also, and I think this is very important, we're bringing people together through live sessions. And by the way, Tom, we'd like to invite you to host a live session, maybe for the SPaMCAST as well, like have a live session, record, put it out as an episode, for example.
Absolutely.
But the idea is to bring people together so that we can network. The tagline for the event is grow your network. And I think this is a very important aspect. We need to grow a very clear identity of what it is to be a Scrum Master. And of course, that starts with building a community, because it's the community that defines the identity, right? There's going to be many visions for the Scrum Master role. I'm just presenting one. There's other visions that are also valid, and we need to find our identity as a community. So we have a lot of live sessions planned, a lot of live sessions in all time zones. So there's going to be live sessions in Asia, like New Zealand, Australia, India, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia. There's going to be live sessions in Central European time zone. There's going to be live sessions in South America, North America time zones, so that everybody can join and network with their peers. Because I think that growing your network is a key aspect of also developing the knowledge and growing the energy, as you very well said, Tom, within the Scrum Master community.
Controlling the identity, defining the identity of the Scrum Master. What I'm concerned about, is, at least here in the States, is that people in HR, human resources, are actually the ones that are defining the role. they don't have a good handle on what a Scrum Master is. They look at, the PMI's definition, the PMP, ACP kind of stuff, the project managers, and they say that's what this is. A Scrum Master is a junior project manager. How can we engage that part of the community that actually is, inflicting their identity, their interpretation of our identity on us?
That's a great point. So my hope would be that organizations like Scrum.org and Scrum Alliance would be active in that space. And they would actively be informing and training HR people, like participating in HR conferences, as an example, about the importance of these roles. And the Scrum community has a very important role to play, but they also have a vested interest. I mean, think about it. If the Scrum roles become standards in HR, that makes sure Scrum is there forever. Like, why aren't they doing this? Right? Because we believe Scrum will bring change to the world of work. We believe that Scrum actually has a positive impact in the world. It needs to have that positive impact in the world, but it's not going to happen if we ignore things like what you just said, like this role descriptions, as an example. Of course, they've done a lot. I'm not criticizing what they've done. For example, the certification programs that they have set up help to define what the role is. But definitely we need to engage with HR. And why not? Through the Scrum Master Summit and other events, actually come up with suggestions for the community to use, right? Because if everyone that comes to the Scrum Master Summit gets out of it a clear understanding that they can put forward to HR about what would be a good job description for a Scrum Master, then we all win, right? Because it's the community defining it, giving it to HR, they use it, we all win. It's a win-win, right? So that might be, hey, why not? If somebody's listening that wants to host a session, a live session discussing what might be a good standard for a Scrum Master job description, why not come to the conference? We'll help you promote the session. We'll help you get people in, HR people as well, and let's have that discussion. And that's why communities are so important, because they can take action in that regard.
When is the Scrum Master Summit?
So the Scrum Master Summit will take place on the week of May 17th from Monday through Friday. There will be recorded sessions that can be seen later on. And there will be live sessions, which are only available, of course, if you participate live.
How do people find out more information? How would they get involved? How would they find out how to attend?
Yeah, absolutely. So to attend, it's very easy. Just go to scrummastersummit.org and you sign up and you'll get immediately a free ticket. All of this content will be free throughout the week of the conference. So there will be a possibility to buy VIP tickets that give you access to the content later on and, forever, virtually forever. But if you want to attend, it is free for everyone because the goal is to build community. And at that time, we hope that week is going to be the anchor for that community, which is kind of, very distributed, very fuzzy out there, to coalesce, to become something more concrete for people to interact, to grow their network, and of course, to develop what is the role of the Scrum Master globally.
Do you, and to put a positive spin on the past year and the whole pandemic, do you think that the fact that we've all become distributed very quickly and stayed distributed for a period of time has actually made it easier to conceive and execute things like the Scrum Master Summit?
It's a great point. Who would have imagined that in March 2020, well, it was shortly after that, not exactly March, but around that time, people would stop going to live conferences, to, in-person conferences. And we did. I mean, I used to go to 10, 12 conferences a year. And in 2020, I went to none, right? And I think that the conference organizers are also struggling with that because it is also an effective way in which we build community, and suddenly it's gone. Luckily, a lot of those people started organizing virtual events And now every week there are hundreds of agile events, which is it's a wealth of connection and knowledge that we can take advantage of if we're just in the right places. But it also, of course, then disperses the community even more, right? It's like we kind of lose contact and we end up going to the events where the people whom we already know are. And one of the great things about going to conferences, I mean, Tom, you know that, you've been to many conferences, is that we meet people that we never thought we would meet. And we create connections that, they'll last forever. Some of my best friends I met at conferences. Some of my business partners I've met at conferences. So I think that's also an important aspect. And that's why we want to focus also on live sessions for the Scrum Master Summit, because we want to not duplicate or replicate what happened in live conferences, because that's impossible, but we want to create the opportunity for growing the network, for people to meet each other and to know people, to meet people they would otherwise not meet, and learn and share.
I think it sounds like an absolutely fantastic event. Vasco, before we wrap, if you woke up tomorrow morning and someone handed you a magic wand and said you could make any two problems that affect Scrum Masters go away, what would those two things be and why?
Well, so the first one is that all Scrum Masters would be proud of their role, right? So that would be the first thing. And the second thing is that all Scrum Masters who are now proud of their role because of the first problem we just solved are able to help their companies bring value to the world. Because here's the thing that not many people talk about. To be successful business-wise, you need to bring value to the world. Nobody's going to pay you anything if you're not bringing value to their lives, right? So for me, that's also something to be proud of. When our businesses succeed, it's because we're bringing value to people who need the services and products we produce. So that's very important. So those two things, be proud of the Scrum Master role. Everybody would be proud of that role. And not only that, but they would be actively contributing for their businesses to have a positive impact in the world through what is already in place, which is providing great services and great products to their customers.
Absolutely. How would people continue the conversation?
So the easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Just search for Vasco Duarte and you'll find me there. I'm also on Twitter, but I'm more reachable, I guess is the word, on LinkedIn. And as you join Scrum Master Summit through the scrummastersummit.org, you'll also get an invite to our Slack. So join the community, interact with your peers, share what you've learned, but also learn from what they have to share.
Super. I really look forward to the summit. I will go out and sign up today myself, and I hope all of the listeners do. I have all of those links in the show notes. Vasco, thank you very much. This has been absolutely fantastic. Your podcast has, actually, it's on my playlist. I could actually pull it up on my phone and show you right now. I enjoy a lot of the things that you do. So before we wrap, why don't you run down some of the things that you do and want to promote?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, of course, for the people who are interested in the topic of Scrum Masters, we have the Scrum Master Toolbox.org. That's the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, and you get new episodes every single day of the week, and sometimes even every single day of the weekend as well. So there's also what we call the bonus episodes, which are like longer form, more in-depth discussions that are coming out on the weekends. Not every weekend, but on the weekends as well. And there's a lot of stuff you can find there, like how to help product owners, books that help you by giving you concrete tools, like the Actionable Agile Tools book, which is available on the website. There's also a new book that two authors are writing for us, meaning they're writing their book, but we are publishing it, which is Shift from Product to People, about the third wave of Agile adoption. So you definitely can find that also on the scrummastertoolbox.org. So we all that we do, the podcast and everything around, is to help Scrum Masters to succeed and to help their team succeed. So if you're interested, I think that's a great place to go.
Super. Thank you again for sharing with the podcast audience. Thank you for everything that you do for the entirety of the community. You are, as I was out walking my dog this morning, I was thinking that you are one of those people that I actually put up on a pedestal and want to be when I grow up. You and Johanna Rothman, those are the you two.
You are too kind, Tom. But thank you very much for having me on your show, and I hope to continue to listen to your show for many years to come.
At least another 10. All right. The Software Process and Measurement Cast is a proud media sponsor of the Global Scrum Masters Summit. The first Global Scrum Master Summit is coming soon on May 17th, 2021. Sign up at Scrum Master Summit 21. Link in the show notes. Let them know you heard about this on the Software Process and Measurement Cast. The Software Process and Measurement Cast is also a proud media sponsor of the DevOps Online Summit, coming April 26th through 30th. Link in the show notes. This is the third annual DevOps Online Summit. Tom Henriksen, friend of the podcast, does a marvelous job at getting people together, providing information, and networking, and helping people network. Link in the show notes. In Reread Saturday news, this week, Chapter 5 of Fixing Your Scrum Practical Solutions to Common Scrum Problems by Ryan Ripley and Todd Miller. Have you bought your copy? This week, in Chapter 5, we dive into fixing the anti-patterns that hover around the product backlog. Links to all of the recent editions of Reread Saturday are in the show notes. Next week, we will talk with Caleb Woods, CEO and Senior Software Craftsman at Role Model Software. Caleb and I talk about the role of craftsmen in developing and maintaining software. Pretty much everything else. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?